Abir says, can you please mention all the fard kifayah for females? If there are less female doctors who are specialists in a particular field of medicine, will going into the field by females be considered as fard kifayah? Abir is asking about a terminology in Islamic fiqh, which is known as fard kifayah. And some translate it as communal obligation. What is meant by communal obligation? We have what is known as fard ayn, an obligation upon each and every individual. Example, someone comes in, he sneezes, and he says, Alhamdulillah. It's an obligation upon every Muslim who heard him say, Alhamdulillah, to reply by saying, Yarhamukumullah. This is an obligation. It's an individual obligation upon each and every adult, male, Muslim, capable, residing individual, once he hears the adhan from the masjid, to respond and pray in the masjid. This is an individual obligation, fard ayn. Now, when it comes to communal obligation, this means that if part of the community performs it, the vast majority are exempted from sin. And if none of the community performs it, they're all sinful. Example, a Muslim dies. No one takes care of washing, shrouding, offering janazah prayer, and burying that Muslim individual. All the Muslims in the community will be held accountable on the Day of Judgment, and Allah will punish them for that. If one person of the 100,000 in the community stood up and took care of that deceased person by washing him, shrouding him, then calling the people to offer funeral prayer, even if he prays it on his own, nobody comes, and he takes him and he buries him in the Muslim cemetery, Alhamdulillah, the 99,909, whatever, they're exempted from the sin. So now, coming back to Abir's question, what is a communal obligation? It is something that can be related to religion, as in the example I gave about preparing a deceased for burial. And it is also possible to be in fields other than religion. In our community as Muslims, we have to have an engineer that would suffice Muslims from going out to the non-Muslims for consultation. If none of us come forward and apply to be an engineer, we're all sinful. Because now we're dependent upon the disbelievers for such work. If our community does not have a dentist, and we are obliged to get a kafir to do this work, we are also sinful for that. So even in normal things, when we don't have car mechanics, it becomes a communal obligation. Likewise, and by far, when it comes to the field of medicine. Scholars say that it is a communal obligation to have doctors, males and females. Well, if we don't have female doctors, who will check upon my wife, my sister, my daughter, and my mother? Would I take her to a male doctor? Would that be appropriate? Of course not. Therefore, they say this is a communal obligation, which allows a woman to go in fields that are dubious out of necessity. So we will approve her doing things that in normal cases that are haram and prohibited. Give an example. In necessities, we can allow things that are normally haram. I'm interested in marrying this sister. I go and propose. Her father looks into my case and he approves. She gives the green light. We come to the moment of truth, which is the initial interview. I go and visit her father. It is permitted through the sunnah to look at her. Though, generally speaking, I'm ordered to lower my gaze. Not in this case. I am allowed to look because this is a necessity. A doctor, a male doctor who gets a female patient who's suffering and in pain and agony, he has to look in order to diagnose her illness. He may have to touch in order to reach a conclusion. This is permissible for necessity. Likewise. But having said that, this male doctor is not allowed to, if the woman is complaining of pain in her ear, he's not allowed to ask her to strip naked. What is this? He's not even allowed to ask her to take off the veil of her face, because the area where he is allowed to touch and to examine is a specific area. Everything else remains haram for him to look at, to touch, etc. So Abir, yes, we do need female doctors. And this means that you can go to a medicine college. But we have to always raise the bar, in the sense that don't go to a mixed college when there is a segregated college. You try to lessen and reduce the amount of sins practiced to the best of your ability. So you try to avoid mixed colleges and universities. If not possible, then you have to stay as far as possible from male students. You have to abide by the full hijab, and there's no compromise in this. And sometimes I get students saying that we have to take off our hijabs and wear this shirt which has an open chest and short sleeves and go into the operating theater. This is not permissible. Sheikh, this is a communal obligation. With all due respect, there is a limit. There are red lines that cannot be crossed. So if a female is doctor or an intern or a student is obliged to touch male patients in order to examine them, this is a necessity. But for her to take off her hijab and to reduce the amount of clothes and expose her awrah, no one says that this is halal. So again, you have to fear Allah Azza wa Jal to the best of your ability when you are studying medicine. Now, one says, okay, Sheikh, would you allow your daughters to go to medicine school? The answer is no. He says, why? He says, Akhi, this is a personal preference. I personally believe that if other women are able to do this and they have the gut feeling that they can go through without fitna and without being changed or altered or compromise their religion, alhamdulillah. But this does not mean that I would allow my daughters to throw themselves in such a test. Until now, we can bring other Muslim doctors, female doctors from all over the world. And we can do that without any problem, bringing them to our country. So I feel that, for me personally, that this doesn't fit. If someone asks me, I would say that this is okay for you, if you are okay with that. But people, inclinations differ from one person to the other, and Allah knows best.